You are recording.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. So, hi everyone. This is Sue Reynolds with the American Student Achievement Institute, and this is our final webinar for districts that are participating in redesigning school counseling. The focus of this webinar is to help you look at the Lilly Counseling Initiative Implementation Grant. So we'll provide for you an outline of that grant and then some suggested language for putting in different sections. I did upload a Word document that has two links in it. One is a link to the actual outline and the suggested language, and then the other one is a link to a place online where you can sign up for a consultation with me that you'll send me your grant application final draft, and then we'll spend an hour on the phone after I've had a chance to look at it, kind of going over it. But primarily today what we want to talk about is that Lilly implementation grant application. All of your schools were to have completed all of their work yesterday, so that means that all of the aggregate district-wide data reports should now be ready to go. However, we do know that there are some schools that are working a little bit behind, and if they've not submitted some of their work to us, that means that the district level reports would be incomplete. So if you open up some of those reports and there's schools missing, it's because we haven't received their work yet. But for most of you, all of the schools finished yesterday, and so now we have, between now and May 19th, you have 10 days to finalize your Lilly implementation grant application. And as we go through this, I think you'll see that I think we've positioned you quite well to write a very strong grant application. I think you'll see that everything in that grant application has been provided throughout the process that we've been doing with your schools this year. So, okay, so let's just open up that document. And again, if you download that Word document, it has a link in it that you can actually then print this if you want to, or just follow along. So I'm going to go to that document, and here it is. So basically, we've created a grant application outline that follows exactly the instructions in the RFP. A lot of times people, when they're writing grants, will want to change around the organizational structure, and we have found that it's a whole lot easier for grant readers to find what they're looking for if you have followed the same format that they established in their RFP. We also find that it works really well if you're using some of the same language that they're using that in the RFP. So all through this, we've tried to use similar language as the RFP and also a same organizational structure as the RFP. So, okay, so a couple of things that we wanted to make sure that we said up front. So you'll see in this section it says important, read this first. One thing that's critically important is that you not copy the language that we're giving you. We sat down with Lilly a few weeks ago to kind of talk about, to clarify some of the different parts of the RFP and to ask some questions. And one of the things that we said to them was, you know, we have worked with 150 schools this year, and when parts of the RFP ask, you know, what did you do during the planning phase, we know what the schools did, and we could save the schools a whole lot of time if we just wrote that section of the grant application for them and then just had them tweak it if it didn't quite meet what they did in their schools. And when we said that, the response that we got was, you know, we asked them if that would be okay, and the response that we got back was the only thing they would say is this is a competitive grant. And just kind of reading between the lines, we think that if you if you are using the same language that that other schools are using, it could make it look like that your grant isn't maybe coming from your heart. You know, it'll look like you just copied and pasted something instead of really looking, instead of really, you know, talking about what's in your hearts and what you are passionate about. So, okay, so that's something to think about. We really want to make sure that the grant is in your language. And again, imagine if you're a grant reader and all of a sudden you're starting to see, oh, I've read this sentence before, or I've read this paragraph before. You know, it's just really going to, we think, bring about some questions about how passionate you are about doing this work. So we're going to give you suggested language, but please rework it so that it becomes your language. Okay. And then also, just wanted to point out that if you are a school that's going to continue with us during the implementation phase with Guiding All Kids, we have a separate set of writing tips for you that we distributed to those districts last week that really specifically include what you'll be doing in the next 4 years. And if you're still thinking about Guiding All Kids, the deadline has passed. However, we have one cohort. We had a great response. We have one cohort that we could use 2, maybe 3 additional schools in. So if you still have schools that are interested in Guiding All Kids, you know, contact us right away and we can talk about that and then help you get that initiative into your grant application. Okay. Then another thing we wanted to remind you about before we begin is that you do have these district level reports. So in many steps, like in the priority goals, we've aggregated for all of your RSC schools what the priority goals are. In the budget, we've aggregated for you what the desired budget is in each of your schools so that you have those reports to help you think about what to put in your district level grant application as well as the funding that you might need. So, and then we just put in some upfront, some things that we thought might be helpful. Just if you're using these terms in your grant application, guidance, counseling, advocacy, program management, and non-program, here's quick definitions of those that you could use or rework. And one other thing, if you do like our language and you want to use that, I think that would be okay as long as you quoted us. So, you know, you could say, according to the American Student Achievement Institute, guidance activities are those activities which, and then you know, quote our definition. So, so I think quoting us is okay, but I think taking our language and just submitting it as though it's yours will not be okay. Okay, and then we did a few things up front for your grant writer. We know that in a lot of districts, your grant writer is not a school counselor, maybe somebody that hasn't been involved in redesigning school counseling. So we wanted to just explain to your grant writer, you know, here's how your schools and your district came up with their vision and their goals, and here's how we, you know, here's how we have data already, and here's how we organize the data. We have program data and student data, program data, and root cause data, and how we're thinking about sustainability. This one, when we get to this point, I think this is going to be big. And I see a typo. Let me just fix that right now. There we go. Okay. So here is the actual application. So the application has 3 parts. It is defined in the RFP. There's the executive summary, and then there's a narrative part, and then there's a set of appendices. So in the executive summary, one thing that the RFP did not ask for was an introduction to your district, but we think that's kind of important just to give the grant reader a sense of who you are. So you'd briefly describe your district and your demographics. The schools have already pulled that together at the school level, and if you wanted to see their reports at the school level, this link will take you there. Then the RFP, the first thing it asks for is your grant developers. So this is a paragraph that would explain to your grant writer, or that you could rework to put into your your application, this language. This is who developed your grant. So we've got the school counseling councils that were in each school that looked at data, that went through the vision, that set the priority goals and the root causes and the activities and the evaluation plan. So we're just, explaining how this grant development in your schools was really a grassroots initiative. It wasn't 2 or 3 people sitting in central office, but in some of your districts there were hundreds of people that came to the table in your different schools to develop this plan. So yeah, so this kind of explains that. So you could, put this in your own words. And then also there's 2 reports here, district numbers reports. I'm going to open that and show it to you. And then you've also got the individual school counseling rosters that you can open with your school's passwords. The district report you can open with your district password. So I'm going to go ahead and open that report to show you what you've got. And in this report, and I may not have that link right. I tell you what, let's go through it this way. Let me see here. I'm just going to log in as a district and then I can show you to you more easily. Oops. Okay, I'm going to go to, let's see, RSC, and I want to become a district, and I'm going to become, let's just use Dunlin, become them. Okay, and now going to their page. Okay, so I'm logged in as Dunlin, and okay, and down in, so you can get to it this way, down in apply for funding, here is the review district numbers, and if I open that up, I can see that here are each of their schools, and then these are the members that are on their council. So they have, across the district, they have 50 people that have participated in their different in their leadership team. I'm sorry, this first one's their leadership teams. 50 people that have participated in their leadership teams. And then if we look down at their councils, they have 209 people that have been coming to the table to put together this plan. So I think especially for them, that would be, that's impressive. I think that would be really nice to work into their grant application. And where we would suggest that is in this part right here. So in total, 200 and whatever that was, 209 individuals have served on our schools, school counseling councils, and have developed the plan that's outlined in this funding proposal. Okay, so that's the grant developers. On the implementation management, we would suggest that you describe how you're going to, who's going to manage the implementation, and to really have this thought out. So you want to consider who's going to manage the activities, what will they do, when will it happen, the management skills that these people possess that makes them good managers, or if part of what you're going to be doing in your implementation phase is training them to be good managers of this initiative, how that training is going to happen. So, okay, implementation management. Then the next section is the comprehensive school counseling model to which we aspire. So, so what you're wanting to do here is to describe the model that you're wanting to implement. I would name that model. Then you want to explain how the model is comprehensive, that this model has brought about proven results, And then I would also be sure to align that model with the 5 aims of the Lilly Counseling Initiative, which are listed in the very first paragraph on the Lilly website, but it's basically to help all kids, 1, have social emotional health, 2, succeed in school, 3, graduate, 4, be admitted and succeed in post-secondary ed, and 5, to be productive in a global society as an adult, both in work and in the community. So, so I would say this is where I would say right up front that the model that we're implementing aligns with the goals of the Lilly Initiative. So also, I would also include here that just one sentence, because it's going to come up big time later, but I would also say here that this model that you aspire to was selected after a comprehensive self-study and a comprehensive model exploration during the planning phase. So I suspect that there are going to be a lot of schools that apply, that it's just going to kind of be random, and we want Lilly to know that your schools went through a very comprehensive process. So you can just kind of put a little teaser in here, and then that's going to come up later. Okay, steps we will take to conform to our desired model. Again, this section is going to come up later with a lot of detail. So you're just very briefly describing the lack of alignment between your current state and the future state. You're going to go into detail later. And then you're wanting to say that you've crosswalk your desired model with your current practices during the planning phase. So, okay, outcomes of the proposed counseling model, again, that's going to come up later. So we're just summarizing a later section here. But basically, you're going to want to just introduce your major measurable objectives or the major goals for this planning grant. And again, you might consider aligning your outcomes with the aims listed in the Lilly Counseling Initiative. So, social emotional health may be one of your goals. Having kids be successful in school may be, one of your goals. But we want to make sure that each is measurable. So, and a lot of times I get questions from schools about, how do we measure emotional health? I would think about the data that you have that would indicate that maybe kids aren't having social emotional health. For example, your attendance data and your office referrals. So, so those could be your goals, you would say that, we want to, one of our goals is for all kids to have social emotional health as evidenced by the percentage of students who have sound attendance or low office referrals or no office referrals. Okay, and then you could also introduce here, since RSC is all about helping kids make targeted choices, you could also introduce very quickly, like one sentence here, and say that as a subset of these of our goals for this grant, we have also goals for helping kids make targeted choices that will impact our big goals. And then that's where you could say, to impact the percentage of kids who, whatever your student choices are, turn in their homework, enroll in AP classes, etc. Okay, so that's the summary, or the executive summary. And again, it is really a summary of other parts of the grant that you're going to develop. I would not write the executive summary until you've written the narrative, because then you'll just be summarizing the narrative. Okay, let me see if we have any questions here. And I am not seeing any questions, so I will go on. Okay, so that's the narrative. That's the executive summary. Now let's look at the narrative. So there are 3 questions that in the RFP come right up front. So we're following the same organizational structure. So in this outline of your grant, we've put those 3 questions right up front. So the first question is the features of the comprehensive school counseling program to which we aspire. So we want to, in a concise manner, in other words, not being wordy about it, we want to fully describe the key features of the comprehensive school counseling program to which you aspire. And I would consider these subheadings. So I would do an introduction. In that introduction to the model, you would name the model, include a couple of sentences that describes it, include a couple of sentences about your rationale, and include a couple of sentences about the outcomes and the sustainability. So this is just kind of an introduction. You're going to develop, again, each of these sections as you go through. So the next section we would suggest would be about the organizational structure feature of your model. So you would explain who is going to design and implement and develop the model as it's being implemented over the 4 years. And then who's going to oversee the general implementation. So basically, everyone that's involved with the implementation, you want to make them part of the organizational structure and explain how that's going to work. Okay, then the next one is kind of the meat of the whole thing. The feature would be activities and delivery methods that are included in this model. So you would describe the activities and then how those activities are going to be delivered. Is it by counselors, teachers, community members, whoever? So, and again, this is kind of the meat of the model. Then, I think it will be good to also explain in your model program, the model that you're aspiring to, what does this model have? What features does the model have that enable it to be continually improved? So I would kind of describe that, how are you going to continually improve this model, assess and improve it as you go along. So what are the features of the model that allows you to do that? And finally, the evaluation features. What are you going to evaluate in this model? What gets evaluated? How often does the evaluation happen? Yeah, so those features. So again, remember, these are not things that you are going to do. These are things where you're describing this model that you found that you want to replicate. Okay, and then also on evaluation, we've given you some suggested language. If your schools are planning to continue with RSC, so not with Guiding All Kids, but just with the basic RSC, we will be helping them collect data a year from now during year 2, and also having one meeting with their council a year from now where they'll look at that data and make in-flight adjustments to their model. So that is part of, so when you enrolled in RSC, it's a 3-year enrollment, so there's no additional fee or anything. That just is something we do in year 2 and year 3. We help your schools collect follow-up data and then meet with their councils to discuss the follow-up data. Okay, and then the other feature, the last feature is the sustainability in that model. What about that model that you're about to copy makes it sustainable? Okay, then in the next question, Lily wants to know, how are you currently aligned with those features that you just described? So, so one of the things that we think it would be really good to bring out is how comprehensive your self-studies have been. And that's, we think, one of the strengths of RSC is how much data is collected and how much you study yourself and your kids' needs. So I would explain in this part that you did a comprehensive collection of comprehensive set of self-studies, and here they are. So the top 2 we created specifically so you could include it in your RFP. So the first one is elements of model school counseling programs. This is linked so that you can open it up if you want to look at it, but basically, I mean, it's just, all the elements of a model school counseling program, and then your schools identified which ones they aligned with and which ones they did not. And really, just kind of as an aside, if your school made it all the way through, or because they made it all the way through RSC and are earning Gold Star, they have met all of the elements of model school counseling programs, except for the different delivery methods. So, a lot of the things that are in a model program, your schools already have. They've got foundations, they've got guidance activities, counseling activities. They've got an evaluation plan. I mean, things that a model school counseling program would have, you have because of RSC. So this other report was also, we designed it specifically so you could talk about it in the RFP. But this is a study called Student Opportunities in Model School Counseling Programs. And this may be something where your schools teased out some student opportunities that they were not providing for kids that model school counseling programs do. And so, this is a place where this probably was a report that informed some of the decisions that you made about which model program to go with. So basically, we think that in the beginning of this section about talking about how you're aligned, you'll be able to say something like, we really studied ourselves, and we've done a really good job of figuring out where our alignment is currently with this model and where we have alignment gaps. And I would even list all of the different self-studies so that they see that you did a program design self-study and a student student guidance needs self-study and a counseling needs self-study. And what do our kids think about our counselors, study. So you've really are rich in self-study data. And I would be willing to bet that the RSC schools are, have that hands down over any other schools that are applying for this grant. So, okay. So then after you've, said, okay, we really self-studied and we know where we're aligned and where we're not aligned, then I would just list those current alignments and the current alignment gaps. So, and I wouldn't be afraid to say, we're aligned pretty well, but obviously there must be gaps or you wouldn't be identified with this model. You wouldn't have this model that you want to implement. It must be meeting some gaps for you. So there's probably lots of different ways to organize this section, but we thought it would be help the reader to organize it in the same way as the previous section. So organizational structure, what's your current alignment like? So it might be, in this model program, they have a steering team. We have a steering team. In the model program, there are community partners. We have community partners. So you're explaining what's currently aligned. And then alignment gaps, you could say something like, they have 1 million community partners and we have 8. So this is something that we're going to have to, build up. So we're looking for each of these sections. Where are you aligned with the model that you want to copy? And then where are there gaps? Okay, so that's that section. Then question 3 says, the steps we will take to better align our school counseling program with our desired model. So basically, for each of those sections again, you'll just look at where your gaps are and then discuss what you're going to do. So in organizational structure, we're going to go recruit another 20 community partners. In activities, in delivery methods, we're going to implement a teacher advisor program. In continuous improvement, we're going to evaluate every year because we've never done that before. So in each of those sections, you would be looking at the steps you're going to take as a result of this funding to become in alignment with the model that you're aspiring to. Okay, so those were the 3 questions that appeared in the narrative section. in the Lilly RFP. Then there is this section called additional information. So again, we want to make sure that everything that they're looking for you have talked about. So we've copied this organizational structure exactly like the RFP. Okay, so in the first, and the additional information is numbered. I think it was 1 through 8. So the first one asks for the rationale for your approach. We would suggest that you discuss rationale in 3 different ways. And also in the narrative that came behind number 1 in the RFP, these were the things that they touched upon. So I would say, here's our rationale for our focus. And if you chose to focus on just one building level or one grade level or maybe even one aspect of school counseling, maybe your whole proposal is all about social and emotional health of kids, you just need to explain why you chose that focus. And then you want to explain your rationale for doing so. So if you can pull data into that rationale, that would be great. And this is another place where you can say, you can just kind of work in that, you know, as the 209 people that served on our school's councils talked about the data, you know, this is where they decided we needed to focus. But you can kind of, you know, tie in again that this was a grassroots initiative in your district, which again I think makes your application very unique. So, okay, then one other thing is that if you chose, so in the Lilly RFP, it says, you know, if you narrow down your approach, please explain that. In part of my discussion with Lilly, the light bulb went off for me, and I just strongly suggest this, that if, excuse me, if you are not narrowing down your approach, I think you also need to explain why you chose to not narrow down. So you can say, you know, we chose to focus on all students in all grade levels and in all 3 aspects of their development, social, emotional, career, and academic development. So, and here's why, and then you can, you know, create the rationale, your rationale for doing that. You know, that you really need to you know, beef up counseling K-12. You know, there are needs all the way up the grade levels, and also you could write something about how, you know, you thought that, you know, kids had needs in all 3 of those areas, academic, career, and personal social, and not just one. So if you are deciding to, if your grant application is addressing all grades and all of the school counseling domains, I think you need to create a rationale for doing that. So yeah, so I put that in there. And then use data, and I'd also work in here that, you know, just a sentence or half a sentence that just says, you know, according to the 209 people that came to our council meetings, so you can work that in again. Okay, then this section also talked about model research, and so you want to explain, we think, 2 things. One is, what were you looking for in a model? That, again, is something that I think is very unique to your work with RSC and will be unique to your grant application. I think that schools that were not working with us, from what we've heard in talking with other schools, they just went out randomly looking for cool things and found this model and thought it was cool and found that model and thought it was cool. But your schools went out looking with a purpose. They knew what their priority goals were before they started looking at models, and so they were specifically looking for a model that would address their priority goals. So I would explain that. I think that makes the planning process that you did makes them understand how rich that was. So you'd start out by explaining what you were looking for in a model, and then you would explain what you did to search for that model. So which would, you know, probably be that you did site visits and you attended conferences. but that you also review databases, and I've listed there the 4 databases that we provided. I would also work in that your schools each created a program exploration plan. I think that's something that's very unique for the RSC schools, and again really shows the readers that you had your act together. It wasn't just randomly going out, but you had a plan for exploring different model programs. Okay, and then finally, we want to establish why did you pick the model you picked? How did it align with the things that you were looking for? Um, so what aspects of the model are going to help you reach the priority goals that you have, or the goals that you've put into your grant application? So why is it the right model for you? Okay, question 2 in that section was about outcomes, and we just took a stab at providing you with some sample language because all of our RSC schools did this the same, or pretty much the same. So feel free to rewrite this, rework it so that it's in your language. But basically, we want to establish that you've already collected data, that you are data rich, and you have outcome data or goals data, which is basically, the our student goals that they, have post-secondary and career aspirations, and that they are making choices in area impact those things that will impact student success. And then, that you've collected root cause data, and we've, identified those as well. So again, I think your evaluation and your data is going to be so much richer than what other schools have put together, that I would explain that a little bit. And then we want to explain that you will be collecting follow-up data that will happen in March of each school year if you continue to work with us. We'll help you collect that data in March of each school year. And then I just added on because I want to kind of tease a little bit that this is going to sustain, that this is going to be collected in March of each year during as well as after the implementation phase. So we're kind of hinting at sustainability there. Okay, and then we'll make in-flight adjustments based on what that data tells us. Then here is just a little chart where you could put your priority goals. So the student group that you have the goal for, so these are your grant goals. What kids are going to be impacted because of this grant? What benchmark, what choice do we want them to make? And then you'll be able to put in baseline data, which I think a lot of schools will not be able to do. And also you have target data. And I think this is something that will be very impressive to the grant readers, that you've thought this out so much that you've already got baseline data and you've already got target data. So you put the data in there, and then here's the date over here. And then here's links to the 2 reports where you can find what the schools have said. But this is also, there's a district priority goal summary, and let's go back and I'll show you that real quickly. So the district priority goals, nope, I want to go up to the summary report. Let me just do Control F, priority goals. Here it is. So schools, district, nope, that's not it. Here it is. Summary, so it's in the priority goals section, summary report, school priority goals. And on that report, here is all of the different priority goals that have been identified by the district and which schools identified those goals. So this will help you, we hope, write that section. Okay, and then also for some of our districts, you've already aggregated all that information to come up with your district priority goals, and if so, just write those in there. Okay, and then we're just making a note, again, trying to show that you're data rich, that after these priority goals were established, then you reviewed root cause data. I just think, helping people understand the degree to which you've studied all this is helpful. Okay, so the next section asks you for your, asks you to comment on the additive nature of your grant proposal, its sustainability, and other support. So in additive nature, you're just identifying that the funding from Lilly is not going to supplant funding that your district is already spending for school counseling. In sustainability, you're going to, again, this is going to come up a big time later, but you're going to, no, I'm sorry, this is the place where we really want to explain it, that you're going to list the funds that you're going to need after the grant to sustain the program, and then two, how you're going to come up with those funds. List any firm commitments that you have. If you plan to do fundraising during the grant period, explain what you're going to do in detail. And then this is really important. A lot of schools, rather than having money coming in from your community partners, you're going to be having in-kind donations, like the time that they're giving you to sit on your councils at the school level, or you've got a partner that's actually going to implement a program. So we want to make sure that you've equated that in-kind donation of time with a dollar amount, and that you've listed this in here. And yeah, I misspoke. We're just introducing this here. This is going to come up later because Lily talks about it in two different sections in the RFP. Okay, so we're just talking in general about sustainability, and then other support, and we're explaining that, this question is going to come up again, so just answer it briefly here. Okay, then current counseling program staff, the total annual budget, current counselor per student. In RSC schools, we have an adjusted RFP per counselor, and the put that in right now, and I'll link that after we close. In the district numbers report, it explains to you, based on your counselor's time task log, it identifies the actual percentage of time that schools spend on school counseling activities rather than non-program activities. And so it will tell you if your counselors are really a full-time equivalency, a full-time counselor, or based on their practices, if they're really a half-time counselor or a three-fourths counselor. On paper, they're going to be full-time probably, but in reality, if they're spending time doing things that don't have to do with school counseling, then that they're not a full-time. So, and that will, just to keep your ratios fair, we always suggest that you use the adjusted FTE in calculating your ratios instead of what's written on paper. So, okay. Changes to the staff, budget, counselor responsibilities. For most of you, we know that you're not adding additional staff because that's really difficult, if not impossible, to sustain. Just as an aside, through our decades of doing this, what we have found is that even if you find a funder who's going to fund you big time, that funding normally will stay in place for 2 to 4 years. And Lily knows that too, that anything that you are putting in your proposal that would take a lot of money to sustain in the future is, there's a good chance is not going to sustain over more than a 2 to 4 year period after the grant closes. So, but one thing we can say here, if your school is, if your district is expanding its school counseling services by having other people like teacher advisors or community members deliver part of the school counseling initiative, then you can say in this paragraph, our counselor to student ratio is not going to increase, but using volunteers, our adult to student ratio for guidance and counseling purposes will be much improved. And you could even say something like in our teacher advisor program, the ratio is going to be 12 to 1. or in, based on all of our community partners. We have, we have adults in the community ratio to students at a ratio of, 1 to however many. So yeah, so okay. Then plan involvement and support of the community partners. Um, this is where you're going to list, this is where we're going to go into more details now about the matching funds. So we want to list, the dollar amount, how those funds are going to be used, and the organization that's providing them. And then in-kind donations. And again, you want to list the dollar amount that those are equivalent to, how those, what's going to happen with this in-kind donation and the organization that's providing it. So for those of you, for example, that are using community organizations to deliver a part of the program, you could say the Kiwanis Club is going to put on a college fair and then, estimate how many hours they're putting into that and estimate, what an average salary is for someone normally that would do that work, like a teacher, and then calculate the in-kind donation in terms of a monetary amount that they're providing for you. So I know in our schools, for example, that are continuing with Guiding All Kids, our matching funds are going to be really small in terms of just outright donations of money, but our in-kind donations are going to be huge. Because that's what Guiding All Kids is all about. So yeah, but just in case your reader is kind of focusing on how much money are they bringing in, we want to make sure that these in-kind donations are expressed as dollars, so they can say, okay, well, they don't have any money, but they've got hundreds of thousands of dollars coming in, or 40,000 or whatever, or 3,000 coming in from these community organizations. Okay. Then, in terms of community partners, I think that in this section, in RSC, community partners are defined as people that are actually going to implement activities. But I think in terms of this grant application, we can use that word partner in a more general sense. So in this section, again, we've given you some green language suggesting, I would explain that you have a steering team and that across your district, in your 8 schools, there are 50 people serving on coming to meetings and helping to plan all this on your steering teams. I'd explain that you have councils, and here's kind of what they have done and what they're going to do in the future. And, say we have 209 people that are, coming to these meetings and looking at the data and having these discussions and are going to, be there talking about the implementation. And then your partners, which are, defining that they are actually going to implement activities. Your number of partners we looked at previously, but that's in the district report. The individual school rosters, you can see who those partners are. And then you can see the council members are, and then also the partners. So, okay. Then on your appendices, you've got a template for a Gantt chart and a template for your budget. Look at those real quickly. Let's see, it's going to go here. And so that's down in your district page. That's down the section on apply for funding. Here's create a Gantt chart. And you just click on that and add an item. And so you're just adding the broad strokes. So maybe the first step is to create a teacher advisor curriculum. And then in each of the 4 years, you'd click which month you're going to do that in. In a previous version of this, we didn't give you months on the upcoming years. But after rereading the RFP, once again, we thought that that's probably a good idea to help you sound well thought out on this. If it's something that's going to happen all year, just check them all. If it's going to happen in a 6-month period, just check the 6 months, and that will create your Gantt report. So I'm just going to save this one, then I'll go back and erase it. But if I go back and look at the report, then that you'll see how all those things that you type in end up there. And when we close, I'll erase that out of Dunland's out of their Gantt report. And then same thing on the budget. In the budget report, you just enter an expenditure. Here's the line item. We went over these line items with Lily. They're okay with them. They're not prescribing a certain set of line items. And then budget notes, how are you coming up with the amount at the end? The budget notes we think are important. I like to put budget notes in because I think it says to the reader, the funder, that I am very well thought out in this, and I've done my homework, and I know, how much money I'm going to need exactly for mileage and for this and that. So keep in mind that Lily has told us that they're going to be very flexible with budget modifications because it's hard to plan out 4 years in advance. And they know that you'll be making edits to your plan and your budget as you go. So after you get this all in, the report will spit out. What the report does is it sorts all the expenditures by line item and then totals the line item for you in the budget report. And then that's both of these, the Gantt chart and the budget are things that you can just cut and paste into your grant application. So, okay, I think that we're kind of winding down there. So support statements, on those, our advice for you would be to, that it's probably more important that the support statements are well written than it is to have huge bigwigs giving their support. So a lot of people that are seeking funding will do is they'll actually write the letter of support so that it can tie in directly with what they're trying to do with the budget or with the grant application, and then they'll give it to their to the person that's writing the letter of support as a sample, and then that person can kind of see how, what you're looking for. You want to make sure that their letter of support actually talks about your grant application and the things that you're planning to do with the funding, and why that's a good fit for your community or your school. So that usually, a lot of grant writers will kind of coach the people that are writing their letters of support. What I normally do is I will usually just write some bullet points and say, it'd be nice if you talked about these things. Or I'll take the whole grant app and put it into an outline that's like a half a page so that the person writing my letter of support can skim through it real quickly and then address that in their letter. So it's probably important that the letter of support is not just kind of vague and general, but really addresses the proposal that it's going to go with. Most people who write letters of support will allow you to read it. They want you to get the grant, and so they'll say, will you look this over and tell me if you want to make any edits. So the person that's writing your letter of support, I would think of them as a partner in this. And, we want them to be able to give you input, but we want you to be able to give them input as well. Okay, there's a confirmation that you've met all the applicable laws, and then an endorsement letter from your governing body. And same thing, this letter probably needs to really align with the content of your proposal. So, okay, then that gets us through that. Going to hit one more thing, then we'll take questions and we'll close. In the Word document that you downloaded from the the GoToMeeting panel, there is also a link to this page. So if you would like me to read over your draft, I'd be happy to do that. I've set aside 3-hour time blocks to read, so I'll spend 3 hours going through your grant application, and that will be followed immediately by a 1-hour appointment with you on the phone to just give you any thoughts that I may have. So if you go to this document, just type your name in and your district and your contact information. That's how you let me know that you want to, that you'd like me to look at your grant application. And also, please get me the grant application the day ahead. So like between 8 in the morning and noon on tomorrow, if I did, somebody signed up for tomorrow, I'd be reading their grant app. So yeah, so just sign that up and get me your final draft, and I'll go through and go through it with a fine-tooth comb for you and make some general suggestions, and may also, depending on how many there are, just point out typos and grammar issues and things like that as well. So okay, let's take some questions and we'll go from there. So looking for questions. I'm not seeing any. You know how to get a hold of us. So if you have questions as you work through this, please feel free to call. We really, in our district, RSC, we had several goals for the district this year. One was to help you coordinate your schools, both across building levels and vertically. But the other thing was to get you ready to write this grant application. So we wish you all the luck. We really hope that our RSC schools receive the implementation funds, because we know how much work you've done during the planning phase to write a really sound plan, and now you need money to implement it. So we're really have our fingers crossed for you, and if there's anything we can do to help you in the next 10 days as you get ready to submit your application, I'd be happy to do that. So okay, thanks so much. I'm not seeing any other questions. So we will close, and again, call us and feel free to sign up for a consultation. That consultation link is also on the website, the district website. If you go down to the section that schedule a consultation, so this will take you to that place where you just type in your name and let me know that way that you'd like a consultation. So, okay, thanks everybody, and we will wish you luck and have a nice close of the school year. I know writing a grant application in May is kind of taxing, and we wish you all the luck in getting school closed and your grant application written. Thanks, everyone.